Hi, welcome. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're not going to talk about economics per se.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the scientific method, which is a part of some economic.
Oh, it's part of all knowledge attainment.
Okay, alrighty. So why are we going to talk about the scientific method today?
Because you're Sarah D.
I am Sarah D, and this is...
Dr. D.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, so anyway, he's going to lead the conversation a lot today, and I might peek in there a little bit. So anyway, we're going to talk about the scientific method, and you probably know what it is, and I'm going to leave it at that.
So we're going to talk about it because there's two ways that humans gain knowledge.
Yes. There are two ways that humans gain knowledge.
Two ways. One way is that the daughters of Zeus, the muses, who sit at the foot of all knowledge, Zeus, come down to humans and whisper in their ears the correct principles, knowledge, whatever it is, right? So that's what they do. They come down from Mount Olympus and they share with us their knowledge. And that's one way that we get knowledge. If you're not an ancient Greek, if you're like a modern Christian, you'll call it inspiration or revelation or any of those kinds of things. But that's one process of gaining knowledge, revelation, inspiration. The problem with revelation and inspiration is that each individual has to assert it themselves.
Yes.
You have to gain a testimony of it in order for it to be knowledge and truth to you. Right, so
and then it will only be knowledge
and truth to you, right? Because it's not knowledge and truth to everybody; it's only knowledge and truth to those that have a testimony of it. So that's the problem with it. So you've got to do that, or you have to imbue an authority with it. That is, I go and I find somebody that I think is terribly authoritative. So, for example, I see Donald Trump, and I go, "Oh, Donald Trump, you have all of the knowledge. So you're allowed to imbue the knowledge to me." Or if you happen to be a Democrat, then of course it's Joe Biden that has all the knowledge. So right, and they can abide and they can share all the knowledge with you, and so you've given it the authority, the right to be the muse or to take the place of the daughters of Zeus. So that's one way to get it.
Okay, so we attain knowledge by authority or inspiration.
Inspiration.
Okay.
The question is, how do we generalize knowledge?
So that a community can operate, right? Because if we're all hearing different things.
Yes. If we're all speaking to a different God, the world's a problem, right? So if we all have a different muse, weird things are gonna come out, and there's not gonna be a lot of coordination between it and that kind of stuff. So the question is how to go about coordinating that. And for that, we use something that's called the scientific method. And for those of you that are deeply religious, and you go, "Oh, scientific method's bad." You can read in the older New Testament, God tells you exactly this. Test me.
Prove me herewith. Yeah.
Yeah. Prove me herewith. That's right. So, and that's exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about exactly this: the scientific method that allows the knowledge that came to you as inspiration to be transmitted as something more persistent and more generally acceptable, right?
More than just a bit of cheese or something, as Scrooge would say.
Yes, exactly. More than just, the fancy of my belly at that particular given time causes ideas to bubble up in my head, and who knows where they came from, and right.
Why would I pay attention?
Why would I pay attention? So we have to know what that method is of sharing information across large bodies of individuals.
So perhaps all knowledge comes originally from inspiration.
So
maybe all questions come from that. Maybe
I actually don't have a problem with that. All knowledge comes from ideation that somehow bubbles out of the human mind.
Right.
How's that?
So let's pretend that. Can we pretend this is a human mind?
There's a square one. Yes, it's much like me. Very square.
So here's a human mind. And in this human mind, there are many ideas, and you can imagine, yes, they're stones. I like
ideas.
Shiny. Yeah, they're ideas. There are all kinds of ideas. And this box is like Pandora's box, it goes on. There's no end to it.
It's filled with ideas.
It's filled with ideas because
Yeah.
you have ideas and I have ideas and Dr. D has ideas. And how do we determine which ideas we should move forward with and maybe even make policy if we're in the government arena? So
Right. So if we're talking about the scientific method, this box of ideas here is requisite. It has to exist. And the question is, where does the idea that bubbles to our mind that we investigate comes from? And as a general rule, it comes from we observe something in the physical world. So for example, if I'm Isaac Newton, I'm sitting under a tree enjoying myself and blunk, an apple hits me on the head. And I go, wow, I wonder why that happened.
right.
Right? And everybody looks around at him and says, well, duh, apples fall. And he goes, well, why? Why do apples fall? Why don't they rise up? Or why don't they just stay on the tree? Or we can go down the list of all these things, why? And so we ask this why. And so
He had a childlike mind.
I have this observation.
Yes.
I have this observation. And from this observation, I think about it. Right? I think about the observation. And I come up with what is called a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is a very special idea. It's an if-then statement. A hypothesis says, if something happens here, then something's going to happen over here. That's a hypothesis. It's an if-then statement. That's the idea that we have and that we can now apply the scientific method to. Now, the deal is that in order for a hypothesis to be useful in any way, it has to be falsifiable. That's weird. What I have to be able to do is it has to be deniable, right? It can't be truth for the sake of being truth. It has to be something that can be denied. That's the only way we gain knowledge. So there we go. I've got this hypothesis.
Another way to say it's testable.
It's testable. That's right. I have this hypothesis.
So when we were talking about this yesterday, you said something about you need to ask a question that yes is not the only answer.
That's right. Yes is not the only answer.
Okay, yes is not the
So
only
it can't
answer.
be a tautology. One cannot test a tautology. A tautology is something that is always true or correct
No matter
or
what
factual. Right. No matter what happens, it's always correct. That does not make it truth. That just makes it existence.
So for instance, say this was it Isaac Newton?
Isaac Newton. Yes.
Well, that's the apple.
That's the apple.
But that's not the one that Einstein...
Oh, right. So here we've got this really cool thing, right? So Isaac Newton, so apple falls, hits him in the head. Why? And he sets up a bunch of experiments to figure out, why apples fall, how fast they fall. Can I determine how they fall? Can I understand how falling takes place? And what he does is he takes a beautiful hourglass and he rolls balls down inclined planes and he times them with the hourglass. And he goes, oh, look, there is a set of principles that rolling balls always adhere to, right? So the steeper the incline, the faster it is by the end of it. And from that, he's able to measure the force of gravity at the surface of the earth.
So if there is this climb, then there is this force.
Exactly.
Is that right?
And so he comes up with this beautiful concept, force equals mass times acceleration. He calculates the acceleration of gravity. He knows the size of the balls. He uses different sized balls. He sets up experiments. To test his rolling of the balls. And
that's his idea.
That's his idea. His idea right here. And guess what?
It lasted for a long time.
So his idea, as he's testing it, is always...
It's failed to disprove.
That's right. He says if I have an incline of this with the force of gravity being 9 meters per second squared, then I'm going to see the ball traveling down this incline in this amount of time. So he can figure out all the laws of motion. He understands them. Oh, this is great for artillery, by the way. So, armies want it. Where will the cannonball land? That's an important thing to know when I shoot it up in the air. The force of gravity allows him to do all this stuff. So he's national security, hazard. So he comes up with this set of equations that explain how motion exists here on the surface of the planet. And we fail to reject his idea. We say his idea, so we test his idea over and over again, shooting cannonballs.
And that sounds confusing, fail to reject. But one way you said it to me that made the most sense is it might be true.
It might be true.
It might be true, but we're not going to say it's true. It's not proven.
I can't prove it's
Does
true.
science prove anything?
No, science can't prove anything's true. That's the cool thing about science. What it can do is reject stupid ideas. So if it was a stupid idea, we would reject it and we could throw it out of the box.
Oh, we wouldn't put it back in.
No.
It's a bad idea.
A bad idea gets thrown out. We can the Earth is the center of the universe.
So one bad idea, unless you're a flat Earth person, is that the Earth is flat. And so that was a bad idea, so it was thrown out. Of course, we know there are people who believe differently, but...
And the Earth was the center of the universe. That one got thrown out.
Yeah.
And the sun was the center of
These
the
were
Earth.
thrown out.
That got thrown out. So all of these got thrown
These
out.
were the ideas, and then they were tested, and then they were thrown
Thrown out because they didn't hold...
But the one of... What's his name?
Isaac Newton's didn't get thrown out. It just got put back in the box.
Ooh, let's put it back in.
It's back in the box. It's one of those things that we feel pretty comfortable about.
And it was pretty comfortable for...
Hundreds of years. We called them laws of motion. And then there's weird guy with big eyebrows comes out.
Oh, you
Not
shaved.
me. Not me.
He shaves his.
And so there was this experiment done by two people named Michelson and Morley where they shot light beams at 90 degrees from one another. And the idea of shooting light beams at 90 degrees from one another is that if one of them's traveling in the direction of the Earth and one of them's not traveling in the direction the Earth is traveling, that those two beams are going to reach their destinations at the same distance apart at different times.
That was the hypothesis.
Because if I shoot a light beam or if I shoot a bullet and the thing that I'm shooting at is moving away from me, it'll take me longer to get to it.
So we'll say it's this idea?
Yeah.
Okay, that's this idea. That's not the same idea
Yeah.
that Newton had.
Well, we'll find out that it was called Euclidean relativity, and yes, that's what Newton used as his base assumption. And Michelson Morley show that this Euclidean relativity is false.
So really, if that's the same thing, then that's the Newton one.
Well, that's an underlying assumption in the Newton one.
So it makes it
Oh no, this one is now suspect. Ooh, Michelson Morley say the fundamental thought process that underlie Newton's idea was false.
But we can't throw this out because part of it's okay.
Because when I roll balls down inclines, it does just fine. But then there's these other guys. So Einstein goes, well, let's think about this. Let's think about this. Let's think of that. So he comes out with something called general relativity. And general relativity is a new set of laws of motion and gravitation that are different from Newton's. Right? It turns out Newton's were wrong. He was a booger-eating moron.
So we throw it out?
Yeah, it got thrown out. And it's replaced with Einstein's general relativity.
Okay. Einstein's general relativity is right here.
Sitting right there. Oh, by the way, it's not right all the time either. Right? So
It's kind of like me. I'm not right all the time.
I'm not right all the
I'm
time
right
either.
most of
But
the
so
time.
the deal is that even if we call them the Newton laws of motion sound like truth. But they aren't. They're flawed. They're false. So
we are
science
ever-
can falsify things.
but it can't prove anything. It's only so we've got this one and we haven't falsified it, so we're still keeping it in the
Box. It stays in the box. Einstein stays in the box.
Einstein stays in the box, and there are a lot of other ideas.
Yeah, we've got Niels Bohr out there. Niels Bohr is out there with his quantum mechanics, and that's like Einstein's and quantum mechanics. They don't love one another, but they're both in the box because we can't do anything about them.
because we failed to reject them. So either one of them might be true, or both, depending
Or
on
neither.
Or neither.
Right. So that's the scientific method. The scientific method, the stuff that is still, the stuff behind which there is a scientific consensus is stuff that we have failed to disprove. We have not proven it true. Science cannot prove things to be true. That's not the way the method works. That's not the thought process. I can throw out bad ideas. I can throw out bad ideas. Now, here's where science becomes faith-based.
We have to go, act as if it is true.
Right? But beyond that, over infinite amount of time, I'm going to go through these things, and I'm eventually, Newton got thrown out, Einstein may get thrown, or this was Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr gets thrown out. Einstein gets thrown out. Whoever comes after them gets thrown out. And we are of the opinion, this is the faith that we have, is that when we start this process, inside this box of conceptions that are human in design, human ideas, inside that
maybe come from inspiration.
There is truth, right? That the human mind can conceive truth. But there's this potential problem that the box is empty after we've removed everything. That is, there is no way for the humans to know or understand or see truth. The scientific method guarantees none of that. It's by faith that we believe that removing fallacy leaves behind truth. But there needs to be human conception that perceives and understands truth. Oh, by the way, if you happen to be a spiritual person, the mind of God and the mind of men are not...
They're not the same.
They're not the same. So if there is truth, there's no guarantee that humans can conceptualize it.
And even if they could, they probably couldn't communicate it well.
So the box could end up being empty. And the scientific method shows that there would be, in that sense, would show that there is nothing that the humans can conceive of that is true.
So that sounds...
Doesn't mean that's not useful, right?
Doesn't mean it's not useful, because it's...
Yeah.
We walk in faith. We walk without perfect knowledge.
So that's the idea. The scientific method rejects fallacy. It doesn't prove truth.
And so with that, we're going to go to, right?
Let's talk about, so one of the areas where people are really bubbly about currently is something called global warming. So I want to talk about global warming. We've got to think about, carbon dioxide. So we're going to call these pink balloons carbon dioxide. And here's what we can perceive about carbon dioxide, right? So we say carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Mm-hmm. The theory is, so let's say what that means. A greenhouse gas means that when radiant heat enters into an area with greenhouse gas, the greenhouse gas absorbs and holds on to the radiant heat. So the environment with a greenhouse gas will be warmer than the environment without it. That's all we're saying. So we're not saying anything malicious. So if I had a jar filled with no greenhouse gases, and I shined a radiant heater on it.
That's the sun.
It could be the sun, any radiant heater. And I measured the temperature inside the jar, I would get a temperature. If I add... Now the theory would say I've put a greenhouse gas in there. So the radiant heat would be more trapped inside the jar, hence the temperature in the jar would go up. And oh, by the way, when we do this experiment, it does. And if I put another greenhouse gas in there, it will go up more.
But the same one, right? Carbon dioxide?
Yeah, carbon dioxide. If I put more of the carbon dioxide in, the temperature would be higher. Oh, and it works. This works really well. And if I put another one in, it works really well. Temperature goes up. I can predict how much the temperature is going to go up by putting this heat source in front of this lamp, and the properties of the greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, I can measure it. And so the scientific method says I can fail to reject that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. And my best guess is that it is.
It might be.
Yeah, my best guess is that it is. But I can fail to. I haven't proven it's a greenhouse gas. This isn't a proof. All I've done is failed to reject it. Something else could be going on that I don't know and I'm not controlling for in my experiment, but I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm sealing my jar, I'm putting carbon dioxide in it, I'm using exactly the same I'm trying to keep everything absolutely consistent, and I'm doing all of that kind of stuff, and my temperature is going up. My best guess is that my hypothesis that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas has merit. It's not true. I can't prove it's true. All I can say is I cannot disprove it.
So
I failed to reject.
It might be true, fail to reject, or you could say evidence suggests.
Evidence suggests,
So
all of these kinds of words
If
you
you
can
ever
use.
hear somebody say the experiment proved,
They're not a scientist, or they don't understand science,
Because
regardless
science
of what their
doesn't prove
degree is. Right.
yeah.
Philosophically impossible to prove. Yes.
So that's
Math proves things. But that's because it's the language of inductive and deductive reasoning.
It takes a lot more
Yeah,
ability
right.
to understand.
But this here doesn't prove. This adds evidence. It's kind of like there's a body of evidence that suggests we should believe this.
And so we have that idea still in this box.
The idea stays in the box
because it might be true.
that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. As there's more of it, the environment in which it's in will warm up.
But the only thing we know is that environment with which it's in, if it is all plugged up and everything and closed off. But we don't know if it's in an open environment, which we're not going to.
And that's all I want to get to.
Yeah.
Next time we can talk about global warming, statistical experiments, and because statistics is another place where we do experiments and we use exactly the same method that science uses in statistics. We reject or we fail to reject. We don't prove. Statistics doesn't prove.
That's what.
It rejects or it fails to reject.
That's how real scientists talk.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is.
That's not nasty to say.
No.
It's just a misconception. That's all.
So,
We
we
did
talked
okay.
about the scientific method.
And so hopefully that was useful for you. So if you ever hear somebody say something is proven, you can know that they just misunderstand something, and that's okay. You don't have to misunderstand it. You can know that if they say it's proven, you can just say, oh, it might be true.
Yeah, it might be true.
It might be true.
We just know it's not false.
Yep.
Not false doesn't imply true, though.
No, it doesn't. Thank you, Dr. D. Thank you for joining us. We hope that this information was useful for you and it was understandable. Please comment, please subscribe, and make it a great day.
Namaste. You're Sarah D, aren't you?
I am, sir. Are you Dr. D?
Yes. And what do you want people to do?
I did. Make it a great day
No,
for you.
what else do you want them to do?
I want them to subscribe.
Absolutely, you want them to. What else do you want them to do?
Comment.
Yes, and
Subscribe. Like. Ooh.
Yeah, very good. And
Share.
there we go. We've got all the cool things. Yes, I love it.
Thank you for joining us.